The shallows under my childhood headland took Stormbreaker's keel with a grind that sounded like a door remembering its hinges. 3 rocks and a shell waited on the shingle exactly as the old Stormtide mark taught, come by water, not by the cliff road. Beside them the newer claim sat open to rain, a hammer scratch clawed into weed and a footprint deep enough to hold standing water, toes longer than my forearm. I stepped off into cold that climbed my shins and made every old bruise introduce itself. Behind me the carts found the first stones of home. Ahead, smoke rose in thin ropes, not a full burning, not peace either. Between smoke and footprint the shore smelled of wet ash, drying nets, and the iron rain wrongness the linter fishers had named 3 nights ago. Thor favor 3 pressed under my collarbones like a held breath. Odin favor 1 sat unused and quiet. Ty favor 1 rode the unfinished war command still closed on oath edge, defend these living decks until Skadi was driven or a living harbor rock released me. Storm's strength waited tired in the muscle. Rune sight remained rested and unequipped, a cold absence behind the eyes. Level 4. Toughness still the floor. Raven mark quiet. Hammer cast known and spent in memory as a refinement, not a third hand. No one runs inland alone, I said, same order I had given under the last open water. Ship and cart stay tied by horn. If the shore is already owned, we buy living people back with order or we leave with them. No third story. Leaf's answer was a steering correction and the clipped nod of a boy who had steered through worse lies than homecoming. Astrid's answer was a bloody hand on the cart rail and eyes that refused to glaze for ceremony. Bera dropped into the shallows with her chalk plank hugged dry against her chest. Count before speeches, she said. Count, I agreed. We made the first honest light board on wet stone. Able bodies still 3/4. Wounded and small children full. Officers matching the able cut. The 11 freed under Sohild's decklaw stood in a knot that had learned not to look like cargo. Kel and Elder ran the rear message one more time and came back with no stragglers and 1 old woman from the linter who had followed our gift fish like a second shadow and now wanted names for the high sheep path if pale sails came. I gave her the path and asked for hers. She pointed inland where gorse hid a track tax men hated. Then she looked at the footprint full of water and spat carefully downwind. That walked at dusk, she said. Not a story. Oh wait. The tide went out wrong after it. How wrong? Johnny asked, 3-fingered hand already on a line. Wrong like someone herding water, she said, and would not stay for poetry. Old Finn drove his staff into shingle and listened to the headland the way he listened to low rocks. Living shore, he said. Not a court yet. Not empty either. Smoke ropes bent toward the upper field path. Voices carried without words. A horn that was not ours tried a short note and failed to finish, as if the mouth that blew it had been told to save breath for running. I put my palm on Stormbreaker's rail one last time before fully committing feet to home dirt. The rail did not forgive Split Harbor. It only held. Ingrid, grey strip on the cart lane, I said. Colin stays with Astrid until the ground stops moving under fever. Tovi, freeboard and any local boat that can take weight. Solvig, lines for a quick push-off if the footprint's owner comes back hungry. Orm, prow watch facing the outer reach. If pale show fungus on the horizon, horn twice and do not invent courage. Orm's burned scalp tightened. He nodded and climbed where the scratched eyes of the old prow could pretend they still saw. Ingel flexed taped fingers and took a cart tongue without being asked. Dalla translated nothing yet because no one had spoken a language that needed her. She watched the smoke instead, reading panic the way other people read script. Faye Anvildaughter kept paid guide silence and still managed to look like she was measuring goat tracks that were not here. The freed woman with the burned wrist, Sohild had named her twice at every long halt until the name stuck in all our mouths, asked if home shores sold people the way contested decks did. Not while I hold war command and the living still answer, I said. If cloth tries, we cut cloth. She accepted that the way she had accepted Split Harbor's temporary promise, with eyes that kept their own ledger. We hauled carts above the weed line. Stormbreaker stood off just enough to turn if the shallows became a trap, skeleton crew on oars, Leaf refusing to beach her like a gift on a landlord's table. That refusal was love of the written shares and love of not dying stupid. I let both loves stand. The 3 rock and shell mark pulled a string in my chest older than the saga. Boyhood tides. Warnings shouted from this same shingle. The stupid bravery of knowing every path and forgetting paths change under giant feet. I did not pray. I checked the cart line, the ship horn, the wounded, and the oath, and I walked toward the smoke that had to be either my people or the last people left pretending this shore still had a name. Between the first home stones and the drying racks I forced myself to see what the flight had made of us. Astrid's company was a remnant with discipline still in the shoulders. The freed cluster moved like people who had learned that waiting for permission is how nets become shrouds. Harbor runners from Split Harbor carried other coasts in their eyes. We were not a neat warband. We were a moving argument that had not yet lost its breath. A local dog barked once and then decided we were not worth the second bark. That felt like the most honest welcome on any northern shore. I tasted the air again. Salt, smoke, fish guts from yesterday's work left unfinished, and under it all a cold mineral stink like stone licked by unnatural tide. Thor's attention leaned harder. Not words. Weather with opinions. Keep the carts ready to reverse, I told Injal. If the banks come inland faster than people go out, we do not die decorating the lane. Reverse is a kind of courage, Injal said, and set a block under a wheel as if agreeing with Wood instead of me. Solvig tested a frayed painter on a beached skiff and cursed the owner gently, the way cord makers curse the world that thinks rope is immortal. Toby ran a thumb along a strake and shook his head at 2 boats already. Soft, he said. They'll swim as lumber if we load seed. Mark them, I said. No silent drownings. He chalked ugly crosses. Ugly saves lives. Far out, beyond the first black teeth of reef, the waterline seemed to hesitate, then bulge, as if a lung bigger than weather had drawn breath under the skin of the sea. Home had not waited to become a battlefield. It had started without me, and that was the first mercy of the day. The first face I found that belonged to my blood was not my mother's and not my sister's. It was Harver's back. My father stood in the lane between drying racks with a boat hook in both hands and a line of neighbors moving barrels like the tide itself had been put under human command. He did not look like a hero. He looked like a worn fisherman who had decided panic was a luxury for people with spare hands. Left stacked to the lower boats, he barked, not turning. Seed grain under tarps, not under prayers. If you can carry a child, carry a child. If you can only carry gossip, get out of the lane. A boy nearly dropped a salt box. Harver caught it with the hook but and shoved it back into the boy's chest hard enough to teach without breaking ribs. Then he turned and saw me. For one breath his face did the old arithmetic, son missing, son returned with blood on other people's carts and a ship that was not the old voyage's pride and a company that looked like war-wearing fishing clothes. The arithmetic did not finish clean. Fathers rarely get clean sums when the world is already subtracting. Eirik, he said. Not peasant Eirik. Not a title. Just the name that had been shouted across this lane when nets snagged and storms lied. Father, I said. He did not embrace me in the lane. Embraces block traffic. He put the boat hook in my hand as if loaning a tool was the only safe affection, then took it back because he still needed it. You're late for the useful part, he said. Or early for the dying part. Hard to tell which the tide wants. Both, if we stand still, I said. What walks? Something tall enough to make the outer banks kneel, Harver said. Salt beasts with it. Not seals. Not honest wreck meat. Things that come in on a pushed tide and leave bones like broken oars. We've been moving since first dark when your mother's tally said the waterline climbed without wind enough to excuse it. Runa appeared from behind a rack with a slate and a knife used as chalk. My mother's hands were net mender hands even when they held tallies, quick, exact, unwilling to waste motion on theatre. She looked at my face the way she looked at a torn mesh, finding the true hole before choosing thread. You're thinner, she said. And you brought half a harbor's fear with you. Split Harbor fell, I said. Pale fleets. Sten broke truce. We kept living decks moving. Astrid is wounded. Food is ugly. We need this shore's people off the low ground and the winter stacks either moved or denied to anything that herds tides. Runa did not ask for a saga. She tapped the slate. We started before you arrived, she said. Don't rearrange our work to make your arrival look like a beginning. Harver has the lower boats. I have households by door count. Sigrid has the children's line and the seed crates because she counts faster than grown men who want to be brave. Sigrid. The name landed in me like a hook in soft gum. I looked past Runa toward the upper drying ground where small figures moved with rope and stubbornness. One girl stood on a crate shouting numbers in a voice that had deepened a half note since I left and still cut through noise like a sharp awl. I knew the voice. I knew the impatience. I forced my eyes back to work before wonder made me useless. Good, I said. Then we add hands to your plan, not a crown to it. Harva's mouth twitched, almost pride, almost warning. Landlord's men are on the upper field, he said. Eirik Shorent offers the stone barns if every able body swears his work season and you swear longer. He calls it shelter. It smells like a nicer chain. I'll hear him after the low ground is empty of children, I said. If he blocks boats, he becomes whether we cut through. Careful, Runa said. Weather doesn't hold deeds. Eirik does. Astrid's cart creaked into the lane. Colin had a hand on her shoulder and murder in his tired eyes for anyone who jostled the bandage. Neighbors stared. A wounded shield woman was not a common harvest site on a rent shore. Astrid took in racks, barrels, boat hooks, my father's stance, my mother's slate, and the way no one was kneeling to my arrival. I like them, she said hoarsely. They started without your speech. They invented the high path to avoid tax men, I said. Speeches came later and mostly from people who wanted half the catch. Old Finn approached Harva with the careful respect of one working man to another. We carry an unfinished war command and too many mouths, Finn said. We also carry hands. Put them where your slate has holes. Harva pointed without romance. You with the staff, keep the lane law. No private barrels. You with the grey strip, hold the path to the skiff notch so panic doesn't make a second cliff. You with the 3 fingers, check every boat for soft strakes before we load seed. If a boat dies mid-channel, we lose more than pride. Jani almost smiled. At last, a shore that understands bosuns. I sent Kel and Elder as runners between upper field and shingle. I put Sohild's freed not on barrel lines because they already knew how to move weight without waiting for noble permission. I told Leaf by Horn that Stormbreaker would take elderly, wounded overflow, and seed if local boats filled, but would not beach hard. He horned back once, understood, and annoyed, which meant he was alive and thinking. Ingrid set grey spears at the 2 choke points of the lane without asking me which poetry justified it. That was Astrid's company doing what contracts are for. A neighbor I half remembered, Gudrun of the Crooked Net Rack, caught my sleeve. Your Uncle Stenka is on the banks with a hay fork talking about tall weather, she said. If you love him, fetch him before the tide loves him more. I will, I said. Another voice, older, from a doorway, did you bring Sten's justice or your own? I brought boats and an oath not to steal seats, I said. Justice is taller than either and late as usual. The doorway snorted, which on this shore is halfway to blessing. Harva shoved a coil of lying into my arms. Less answering doorways. More moving barrels. Your mother already owns the plan. You can own the heavy end. I took the heavy end. The shore was already running. My job was not to become the story of the running. My job was to keep the running from becoming a slaughter with better lighting. We shifted 3 dried fish stacks before the sun cleared the headland fully. Children went first toward the skiff notch with Sigrid's voice driving them like a small merciless drum. Seed followed under tarps. Oilskins were double counted because oil is how you buy warmth when wood is wet and fear is dry. Bera integrated our flight food board with Runa's shore board without making it a sovereignty fight. That alone deserved a saga couplet, and neither woman would have allowed one. 3/4 able still, Bera said. Full for wounded and small. Sure able match the cut if they eat from our pots. No private feasts because a son came home. No feasts, Runa agreed. Homecomings that eat the winter are just prettier famines. I worked until my shoulders found the old fisherman rhythm under the newer fighter bruises. The favor 3 did not help lift barrels. Toughness kept me from folding when a cartwheel kissed my shin. Oath edge stayed a quiet law wire in the wrist, reminding me that every living person entering the lane expanded the decks I was bound to defend. From the outer reach, Orm's first warning was not a double horn for pale sails. It was a single hard note and a shouted word that needed no translation. Push. The waterline climbed the banks without a wind worth naming. I found Sigrid at the seed crates because that was where the numbers lived. She had a charcoal stub behind one ear and a rope burn on the opposite wrist and the particular fury of a 12-year-old who has been told too many times that counting is not courage. Around her, smaller children moved crates in a chain she had designed, heavy ones rolling on scrap wood, light ones hand to hand, no one allowed to be a hero with a back too young for heroics. Stop lifting with your spine, Ivo, she snapped at a boy. The grain doesn't care how brave your kidneys are. Then she saw me. The voice I knew said my name with a crack in it. The face. I reached for the face the way a drowning man reaches for a remembered shoreline. Edges would not hold. I knew she had our mother's impatience in the mouth. I knew she had a scar on the left eyebrow from a fish knife 2 winters ago because Runa had written me that in a message I could still recite. I knew the rhythm of how she stood when she was winning an argument with the world. What I could not do was assemble a single sharp picture from before the voyage and lay it cleanly over the living girl. The system had taken pieces when Rune's sight ate memory for knowledge. Mother's song. Father's hand details. And the fine edges of this face had been among the prices paid in colder places than this lane. She was real. My memory of her was a net with holes I had chosen to cut. Eirik, she said again, angry now because tears were inconvenient. You're late, and your people are stepping on my tally marks. I went to one knee in dirt so our eyes could meet without me towering like a returned legend. Legends are useless around seed grain. I'm here, I said. I can see you. I need you to know that if I look strange, it is not because you are strange. Something I used on the wreck road takes payment out of memory. I remember you. I remember your voice. I remember you beat me at net repair when you were 10. I may need to learn your face again like a fool who closed his eyes too long. That cost is mine. Not yours. Sigrid stared as if checking whether I was making a poem out of a wound. She hated poems that asked for comfort. Then stop blinking and learn faster, she said. And move your cartwheel off the 3rd mark. That's the barley line. If you mix barley with onion seed again I will put a fishhook in your boot. A laugh broke out of me that hurt. Good hurt. Human hurt. Yes, Clark, I said. She almost smiled. Then she pointed her charcoal at Astrid's cart. Is she dying? Not if Colin and stubbornness hold, I said. She is Astrid. She commands grey spears. She will insult my posture before she thanks me for anything. Good, Sigrid said. We have enough soft men already. Harrick's steward smiles with all his teeth. Runa had come up behind me quiet as wet wool. She heard enough. Her hand found the back of my neck the way it had when I was small and fevered, thumb checking heat, fingers counting vertebrae as if bones were a rosary of practical hope. What did you trade? She asked, low. Sight for bindings. Knowledge for pieces of home, I said. I kept enough to come back. Not enough to pretend the coming back is free. Runa's eyes shone and did not spill. Spilling wastes salt. Then we do not waste what you kept, she said. Sigrid, give him the door count. Eirik, do not turn our evacuation into a duel with the landlord until the children are wet-footed and gone. Sigrid shoved a scrap of bark into my hand. Numbers in her hard little script, doors, mouths, boats claimed, boats doubtful, seed crates, dried fish barrels, oil skins, 2 grandmothers who refused to leave hearthstones, 1 uncle who wanted to fight the tide with a hay fork, 3 infants, 1 pregnant cousin, the names of dogs that would follow and dogs that would guard empty yards. It was better intelligence than most jarls buy with silver. Uncle with the hay fork, I said. Name? Stenka, Sigrid said, then grimaced at the name's echo of other Stens. Not your Earl. Our Stenka. He thinks giants are just tall weather. I'll speak to him, I said. If he still wants the hay fork after he sees the footprint, he can stand on the quay under orders. Not alone on the banks. And the grandmothers? Sigrid asked, already knowing the hard answer and wanting me to say it so she would not have to. We carry hearthstones if we must, I said. We do not die to keep us warm for a giant's foot. She nodded once, sharp. Then she did something that undid me more than weeping would have. She took my rough hand and pressed it to her cheek for 3 heartbeats, forcing my living skin to learn the shape my memory had lost. There, she said. Updated. Now move. Numbers rot if you admire them. I stood. Oath Edge hummed, not a new vow, only the old war command recognizing more living decks entering its care. Storm's strength stayed quiet. Thor's distant demand leaned on the horizon where the roar had been building since Split Harbor's road. I looked at Sigrid's face as long as the work allowed and stored what I could without magic. If the gods wanted more of my family turned into coin for power, they would have to pry it out of a closed hand. Colin called me to the cart long enough for Astrid to study my expression with fever-bright accuracy. You look like someone stole a song from your ribs, she said. Not a song this time, I said. A face I should have been able to hold without effort. Astrid's mouth flattened. She understood costs that did not bleed where spectators could point. Then keep her in the work where you can see her living. Do not put her on a wall to prove you remember courage. I wasn't going to. You were thinking about standing somewhere visible so the shore would believe its son returned whole, she said. Wholeness is a lie we sell to frightened rooms. Put your body on boat lines instead. She was right. I hated that she could be right while half bleeding into Colin's cloth. Door counts first, I said. Insult your posture later, she whispered, and closed her eyes as if granting me a temporary truce with her standards. I went to the two grandmothers with Runa, not alone, because sons with famous wrecks make poor soul negotiators of hearth pride. One grandmother, old Ace, spat when I suggested carrying her hearthstone into a boat. Stone stays, she said. Stone can stay, Runa said. You will not. I will come back for ash when the banks stop lying. If you burn with the ash now, who keeps the recipes? Old Ace hated recipes being used as leverage and loved them more than death. She came, clutching a single blackened rock like a heart. The other grandmother followed when Sigrid promised to write both their names on the seed board so the world could not pretend they had been furniture. Stenker on the banks was worse. Hay fork. Bare feet. A chest like a barrel that had survived too many winters by refusing to notice cracks. I held this ground when you were gutting small fish, he told me. Then hold people now, I said, and showed him the footprint full of standing water. Tall weather doesn't leave toes. If you want the fork, you stand on the abandoned quay under Bjarni's line calls. Alone on the banks you are a story the tide tells wrong. He looked at the water bowl print a long time. Something in him that loved being the last stubborn man wrestled something that loved his sister's grandchildren. Key, he said finally. If your bosun is a fool, I will say so loudly. He prefers loud fools to quiet corpses, I said. We walked him off the banks while the push tide licked the place his heels had been. Learning Sigrid's face did not stop for crisis. Every time I passed the seed line I stole a glance and rebuilt edges, the way anger lifted one brow more than the other, the charcoal smear she forgot on her cheekbone, the precise meanness of her smile when a count came out clean. Memory can be re-earned through attention. The system had not forbidden that. It had only made attention expensive and necessary. I did not equip rune sight to sharpen her. Some prices you refuse even when the slot is free and the rest is legal. There was no rest clean enough for a swap anyway, not with the banks inhaling, and I would not have spent family on clarity if there had been. Orm horned once more from the prow. The outer water had begun to carry shapes that were not reef. Eirik Shorent came down from the upper field with a steward, for spearmen who had never bled for this shingle, and a smile built for contracts. He wore good wool, not mail. Smart. Mail would have told the truth too early, that shelter was a siege with manners. His beard was trimmed. His hands were clean. He smelled of beeswax and stored grain. On a starving coast those smells are a kind of crown. Eirik Halvorsen, he said, as if tasting a name that had become inconveniently famous. The wreck road returns. And brings mouths. Mouths that row and fight, I said. And a shore already moving its own children. We're not here to kneel for soup. Harrick's eyes flicked to Stormbreaker standing off, to Astrid's grey remnant, to old Finn's staff, to Harva's boat hook, to Runa's slate. He was counting force the way Sigrid counted seed, only with less honesty. The outer banks are not safe, Harrick said. Something walks them. My stone barns on the high field will hold households through the next tides. Grain enough if rationed. Water if watched. In exchange, able bodies swear the work season to my domain. And you, the smile widened a fraction, you swear lifetime service under my roof law. Captain of my boats. Shield of my rents. A better chain than drowning, and cleaner than whatever dead fleet follows your wake. Work season was already a known bitterness on this shore. Lifetime was a different animal. Lifetime was how land learned to own bloodlines. Harva's jaw worked. Runa's slate pencil stilled. Around us neighbors pretended not to listen and listened with their shoulders. I felt oath edge like a cold ring around the thought of selling myself into a private seat of power. Not because TYR for bad employment, work is not theft, but because the shape of Harrick's offer wanted my war command and my name as ornaments on his rent rolls while pale sails and giants shared the same horizon. No, I said. Simple words travel farther than decorated ones. Harrick's steward inhaled as if I had spat on a shrine. The spearman shifted. Ingrid's grey strip did not shift. That imbalance mattered. No to the barns? Harrick asked softly. Or no to the price? No to lifetime, I said. Barns can be bargained by household without my neck in your ledger. Work seasons are their choice, spoken door by door, not sold in a bundle because I am standing here with blood on my sleeves. I will not trade this shore's panic for your permanent claim on my service. I already carry an oath about not stealing seats. I will not invent a new seat by becoming your chained captain either. You refuse safety, Eirik said. I refuse your definition of it, I said. Safety that requires every child grow up under your season oath is just a slower wreck. A murmur moved the neighbors, fear and something like ugly hope tangled together. Fear of giants. Hope that someone had finally said the quiet rent math out loud. Eirik's smile did not break. Smiles like his are tools, not feelings. Then take your famous courage to the banks, he said. When the tide herd comes, my barns will still have room for those who reconsider. At a steeper price. If you block the boat lanes or seize stacks while people run, Astrid said from the cart, voice thin and iron, I will treat your spearmen as weather that learn to hold spears. Contract allows defense of living civilians under the war command we already carry. Eirik looked at her wound and made the mistake of looking faintly amused. You should be in a bed, he said. You should be less talkative, Astrid replied. Beds are for people not currently preventing landlords from grazing on disaster. Old Finn rapped his staff once on stone. Public terms, he said. Say them so no one remembers differently later. Eirik offers barns for work seasons and demands lifetime from Eirik. Eirik refuses lifetime. Households remain free to deal door by door. No seizure of boats or winter stacks under cover of shelter. If stacks are moved to high barns by consent, tallies go with them under 3 key watch, shore mothers, ship storeswoman, and 1 neutral neighbor not in Eirik's pay. Bera lifted her chalk plank. I'll be the ship key. I don't like his beeswax. A neighbor woman named Unn, broad as a thwart, lifted a hand. I'll be neutral. My son died on the Old West voyage. I have no love left for pretty chains. Eirik inclined his head, forced to swallow public structure or look like the thief he was trying to outsource to fear. Door by door, he said. And when your giant finishes eating your pride, door by door will come uphill. He left with his spearman and his clean hands. I exhaled through my teeth. Sigrid showed up at my elbow like a summoned clerk. Good, she said. If you had said yes I would have put the fishhook in both boots. Noted, I said. Harva rested the boat hook across his shoulders. You just made him an enemy with manners. He was already an enemy with manners, Runa said. Now he has to be one in daylight. Leif came ashore in a skiff long enough to hear the term second-hand and spit in the weed. He sounds like my father with better soap, he said. Don't make that comparison where Stenka can hear you, I said. Our Stenka has a hay fork and opinions. Leif's mouth twitched. Stormbreaker holds off. I'll take grandmothers and seed when the notch fills. If Eirik's spearmen invent a toll, horn 3 and I bring the freeboard in ugly. Ugly is authorized, I said. He went back to the oar like a man escaping family-shaped politics for honest water. I climbed far enough up the field path to see Eirik's stone barns, thick, dry, useful, and placed where a man could close doors on people as easily as on grain. Useful things are not innocent. I wanted those barns for the shore without wanting Eirik's hand around the shore's throat. Some households will go up, Runa said beside me, reading my stare. Not because they love him. Because infants freeze in open boats if the channel clogs. Then they go with tallies and the right to leave, I said. Unn and Bera hold keys. If names vanish into his ledger, we do not call it shelter afterward. You talk like a man who plans to still be here after the tide, Harva said. I plan to leave this shore able to feed itself without my famous neck in anyone's collar, I said. That requires stacks, boats, and people alive. Not my statue on his barn wall. Thor's pressure increased, a headache shaped like duty. The god did not care about Eirik's beeswax. The god cared that giants were walking drowned margins and that I was still on a rent shore counting doors. I see them, I told the pressure without kneeling. Boats first. Then the herd. A steward's boy tried to drift near our seed line with a friendly face and a stick for helping counts. Sigrid intercepted him, snapped the stick, and gave him the broken halves. Count your own teeth, she said. These crates have mothers. The boy fled. Eirik's manners had limits, so did ours. I gathered the adult witnesses we already carried, Old Finn, Kel, Sohild, the Salt Widow from Split Harbor, Unn, Harva, Runa, and restated what oath edge still bound so home panic could not fog the flight law. I do not seize Sten's seat, son, or ship, I said. I command the defense of these living decks until Skadi is driven or a living rock releases me. This shore's people are entering those decks by need. I do not sell them to Eirik for a bed. I do not crown myself landlord by right of arrival. If I break seat or sun or ship for pride, you name me oath broken wherever ears still work. They answered pieces back. The restatement warmed the gift without becoming theatre. Then the outer banks changed colour. Not with sunset. With shadow that had weight. Boats before axes. That was the whole doctrine, and it offended every man who thought courage was a posture on a bank. I put Harver over the lower notch because he knew which hulls lied about their seams. Johnny seconded him with the three-fingered authority of a boatswain who had already buried friends to soft wood. Toby chalked and rechalked. Solvig ran painters and spare oars like a second bloodstream. Leaf held Stormbreaker as the deep pocket, wounded overflow, seed when skiffs saturated, grandmothers with hearthstones, anyone whose panic made small boats into weapons against their neighbors. No hero loads, Johnny announced. If you jump a gunwale and tip a child, I will throw you back with less kindness than the tide. He meant it. The lane believed him. I split the fighters into two kinds of useful, those who could lift and those who could hold a line while others lifted. Astrid, still cart-bound, became the mouth of the second kind. She sat propped with a spear across her knees and called placements like a woman dealing cards in a hall where losing meant blood. Ingrid, notched shoulders. Injal, barrel ramp. Kel, inland path watch. Harrick's manners may grow spears if stacks look ownerless. So Hild, you're not owns the children's transfer to skiffs. If a man argues with a child for space, the child wins and the man swims or waits. So Hild's burned wrist woman grinned with too many teeth. We can enforce that. Enforce without making new enemies we have to feed, I said. No promises, she said, and I accepted the honesty. The push tide made every delay expensive. Water climbed the outer weed in surges that did not match the moon's old agreement with this coast. Salt beasts showed first as knobs of pale muscle and crusted shell racing the foam line, bodies like seals redesigned by someone who hated seals and loved hunger. They did not yet climb the lane. They worried the banks where Uncle Stenker had wanted to be brave alone. Not yet, I told Stenker on the abandoned quay, where we had staged hooks, spare shields, and 2 pots of pitch. When they come for boats, you swing. Until then you hold this stone and you do not invent a saga. He grunted. The hay fork looked less lonely among other tools. Runa's door count moved from bark to living motion. Households came in ordered clumps, infants first, then elders who would slow a later run, then able bodies carrying stacks. Dogs that would follow were leashed, dogs that would guard empty yards were fed once and blessed with a hand on the head that tried not to feel like goodbye. I worked the ramp until my palm split and toughness turned the pain into information instead of a veto. A boy slipped, I caught his crate and his collar in the same motion and felt Speed's old second measure training still in the ankles from levels past. Might help the crate. Neither measure made the tide polite. Eirik, Orm shouted from a runner skiff between ship and shore, pale on the far reach. Not close. Watching. Bruise sail. One hull for now. Scardy's pressure, thin as fungus, thick as threat. Distance. I called. Too far for hooks, close enough for fear, Orm said. Leaf sees it. He won't chase. Good, I said. We do not donate freeboard to curiosity. Fear still moved through the lane like a cold draft. I climbed a rack pole high enough to be seen and did not give a speech about destiny. I pointed at boats, at children, at the next barrel, and yelled counts until throats took up the rhythm without me. Rhythm is not magic. It is how exhausted bodies agree to continue. The Salt Widow from Split Harbor planted herself at the notch with her ledger page and wrote names as people boarded. If we die, someone may find who we were, she said. If we live, I will charge for ink again. Fair, I said, same answer as on the cart road, and meant it more. A soft strake boat tried to sneak into the line with a full fish barrel and 3 cousins who had not been on Sigrid's door list. Harver blocked it with the boat hook across the bow. Empty the barrel or empty the seats, he said. Fish don't breathe. Cousins do. And if you aren't on the door slate, you wait for second turn unless you're carrying someone who is. They dumped fish with curses. The curses were healthier than silent theft. Harrick's steward watched from the field edge and made no move to help. Help would have looked like shared ownership. He preferred the math of later gratitude priced as debt. I ignored him until one of his spearmen drifted too near a seed cart. Ingrid's shield rim introduced itself to the spearman's knee without a speech. He sat down hard. The other 3 decided the view was better from farther uphill. Thank you, I told Ingrid. Don't thank. Rotate water to the ramp, she said. I rotated water. Colin left Astrid only in sprints, checking Poston-wound cousins from Split Harbour and a local woman whose labour had started from fear. He delivered a living child behind a rack with Bera holding cloth and Runa holding the mother's hands and Sigrid holding other children facing the other way because some counts are not for small eyes yet. The cry of a newborn on a fleeing shore is an argument against despair that even gods should have to hear. I did not have time to weep for it. I marked the mother and infant for Stormbreaker's next pocket load and kept the ramp moving. Uncle Stenker shouted once from the quay, not panic, warning. A salt beast had come higher than the others, crusted shoulders working like a man climbing a net. It screamed with a voice like iron dragged over rock. Stenker's hay fork took it in the mouth hinge. Johnny's gaff finished the lesson. Blackish water ran. The smell was low tide trapped in a closed pot for a month. First blood to the shore, Stenker said, shaking. First warning to us, Johnny said. They can climb. I ordered the lowest racks abandoned if still half full. Food matters. Living jaws matter more. We hurled what we could uphill and left what we couldn't with pitch pots ready to deny. Denial is an ugly word until you watch a salt beast crack a barrel and roll in oil like joy. Leaf horned, pocket ready. We sent old Ace, the second grandmother, the newborn Knot, 2 fevered Split Harbour wounded, and 4 seed crates under tarps. Stormbreaker took them with a lean that made Toby curse and Leaf correct without drama. Drama is for halls. Freeboard is for arithmetic. Again, I said. The second pocket load went heavier on dried fish and elders. The third took Sohild's first child cluster and a pregnant cousin who insulted every man who offered to carry her and then accepted Sigrid's arm because Sigrid did not offer pity, only balance. I saw Sigrid's face in motion and stored another edge. Concentration makes her mouth go thin on the left side first. Updated. Kept. The push tide reached the abandoned lower racks. Salt beasts poured through we'd like a living mistake. Winter stacks are not poetry. They are the difference between a coast that sees spring and a coast that eats its boat leather by the second freeze. Runa's slate and Bera's plank became one mean gospel. Dried fish, barley, onion seed, seal oil, net twine, salt boxes. A small store of iron nails that Toby looked at with religious hunger. 2 casks of sour beer that Harva swore were for wounds and cleaning, not courage, and that every able body stared at too long anyway. People, then seed, then oil, then fish, then timber last, I said, the Split Harbour order adapted to a shore without towers. If we must burn, we burn what feeds monsters before what feeds infants. Timber last, Harva echoed. Always. Men who save beams and lose babies should be buried under their beams. We moved stacks in human chains from lane to notch to skiff to deeper pocket. When skiffs clogged, we ran a second line up the field path toward a neutral high fold unnamed, not Harek's barns, not yet, a sheep hollow with windbreak stones where tarps could make a temporary dry. Consent base work starting as geography before law. Harek's steward called from the slope, my barns are drier. Your barns have teeth, uncalled back. Hollow first. Some households still chose the barns door by door. Runa did not stop them. She made them take tally copies and Un's witness mark. 3 went up with infants. 2 came back down almost immediately because the steward tried to collect season odes at the door and Un's neutral key voice carried farther than his. After the tide, the returning mother spat. Not during my child's open mouth. Good. Fear had not completely killed bargaining. The salt beasts hit the lower stacks we had not cleared. They did not eat like animals with patience. They shattered. All casks they rolled until seams burst. Fish barrels they cracked for the salt fat reek. 1 beast died under a toppled rack beam and 2 others ate parts of it without sentiment. That told me more about the herd than any god's whisper, hunger organized from outside, not a pack with its own law. Deny, I said. Pitch pots went. Flame took a remaining oil skin and a broken fish heap. Heat shoved beasts sideways. Smoke gave us a curtain toward the notch. Astrid coughed blood pink and still ordered grey spears to hold the curtain edges so civilians did not run through fire into teeth. I took a brief storm strength surge to heave a burning beam into a knot of crusted bodies blocking the ramp. The burst was short, shoulder heat, heart double knock, tremor in the back teeth. Toughness kept me standing. I did not stack a second surge on the first. Thol loves repetition until the body becomes a spent bellows. Enough, I told the gift, and the gift sulked like weather denied a roof to smash. Hammer cast stayed unused. No clean practiced throw lane through civilians. A thundered spear into a crowd of neighbors is how famous men become cautionary names. Oath Edge gave timing clarity when a beast lunged the notch and I had to cut with a practiced axe line without opening a boat's gunnel. The gift did not aim for me. It only steadied the agreement between sworn defense and muscle memory. Stenka's fork took the beast low, my edge took the joint, Ingrid's spear finished. Living decks kept. Sigrid cut through smoke to my elbow with a charcoal report as if the air itself were an office. Seed 80 of 100 crates off low ground. Fish half. Oil 2/3. Nails all on ship already because your carpenter steals like a saint. 2 grandmothers aboard. Newborn aboard. Children's lines 60%. Uncle still on key arguing with Bjarni about who owns the next throw. Tell Stenka Bjarni owns throws, I said. Tell Bjarni Stenka owns the fork angle. If they both die arguing, I will kill them again. She ran. I watched her braid whip and stored another edge of the face I was relearning. When she runs with purpose, she bites her lower lip slightly left of center. Updated. A roar rolled in from the outer banks that was not beast and not pale horn. The tight header showed itself between fog patches, a jotun with shoulders like undercut cliffs and a crook staff of black kelp and bone. Around its knees the water humped and ran in directed tongues. Salt beasts flowed where the crook pointed. Standing water in the old footprint made sudden sense. This thing did not merely walk shores. It pastured the sea's appetite and drove it inland for reasons that might have been hunger, sport, or someone else's paid weather. The favor 3 slammed hot behind my eyes. Demand without syllables, here, now, stop. I see it, I said aloud, for me, for any god listening, for the men about to look at me and ask for a miracle I refuse to fake. We finish the stacks we can. Then we break the crook or the hand that holds it. No duels in the foam while children are still on the ramp. Astrid heard me and nodded once, pain sharp. Key fight, not bank chase, she said. Force it to the abandoned stone where footing favors shorter legs and hooks. Yes, I said. She had named the ground before I finished liking it. Partnership, not decoration. Harva wiped pitch off his cheek and looked at the jotun without blinking long enough to become stone. That will take our winter if it wants, he said. Or we take its knees. Knees and crook, I said. And we keep the high hollow stacks covered. If we win and starve, we didn't win. Bera, black with smoke, slapped my arm with the chalk plank. Then stopped talking winning and moved the last oil. Heroes who monologue near casks make me dock their ration. I moved the last oil. When the low lane held nothing left worth a child's risk, I ordered the ramp cleared of civilians. Fighters and designated hook hands only. Boat still running from notch to ship under Leaf's pocket discipline. Pale sail still a bruise on the far reach, closer by a finger than before, not yet a second front if we refused to offer one. The jotun turned its head toward Stormbreaker's Nidhogg prow as if recognizing an old insult carved in wood. It pointed the crook. The tide climbed the keystones like a trained dog. The tide herd came as weather with teeth. First the directed surge, knee-high on the abandoned quay, cold enough to bite bone through wool. Then salt beasts in a driven front, crust and pale muscle and eyes like bubbles trapped in ice. Behind them the jotun waded, each step a local earthquake in the shallows, crook swinging in slow arcs that the water obeyed more readily than any crew I had known. Hooks and shields. Astrid's voice cut from the cart now jammed crosswise as a movable wall at the quay root. She should not have been that loud with a high chest wound. She was anyway. Colin cursed lovingly and packed cloth tighter. Ingrid locked grey remnant into a short fence. Ingjal and Kel took flanks. Stenka planted the hay fork like a battle standard for one man and one bad idea that had become, somehow, a correct position. Bjarni ran line calls, pull, slack, gaff, hold. Solvig's cords became trip snares at stone seams where beasts had to bunch. They, paid and silent, put a wedge under a loose key block so a later step might betray a heavier foot. Dalla shouted plain Norse warnings to shore fighters who froze at the wrong moment, left joint. Shell crack. Not the teeth, behind the shoulder. I stood where the key narrowed and felt Oath Edge settle into practiced axe timing. War command of living decks. These stones were temporary deck. The people behind me were the reason the gift did not sleep. A beast leapt. I cut. Storm's strength stayed banked for a moment that needed force more than form. Blood like brine and rust sprayed. Another beast used the first as a ramp. Stenka caught it. Ingrid pinned. I finished. Breathing hard already without divine help, honest work, honest burn. The jotun's crook swept. Water rose in a tongue and slammed the shield fence. 2 grey spears slid. One split harbor runner, Elder's cousin, not Elder, went over the side into churn. So Hild's freedman dived with a line and dragged him to a ring bolt, coughing, alive. Allied risk. No renown in the splash. I did not look for any. Again. Johnny roared. Feet on stone, not on stories. Thor wanted a full-body answer. I gave a short surge into a 2-handed shove that drove a beast cluster back into the Jotun's next step, fouling it. Heat ripped my shoulders. Heart stuttered. Vision narrowed and widened. Toughness nailed me to consciousness. Tremor followed like a tax collector. The Jotun noticed me then, truly noticed, the way a drover notices a dog that bites heels instead of sheep. It spoke. The voice was rockslide shaped into mockery of speech. Little Thunderborrower, it said. Your god sends puppies to herd's edge. Go kneel inland. This pasture is claimed. This shore feeds people, I said. You don't get to pasture it. It laughed, and the laugh shoved water harder. Salt beasts redoubled. One cracked Solvig's snare and came in low at Astrid's cart. Astrid, left-handed and white-lipped, drove her spear without standing fully, an ugly, perfect thrust into the soft seam under a shell plate. The beast thrashed. Ingel hammered the plate edge until it split. Astrid did not smile. She reset the spear and snapped, Eirik, stop admiring. Move. I moved. Leaf kept Stormbreaker from becoming a second problem. When a beast cluster swam for the pocket loads, oars smashed down in disciplined hate. Orm's spear from the prow took one through an eye bubble. Tovi, who claimed to be only a carpenter, broke another's climb with an adze and looked offended at the mess on good wood. Pale Sail on the far reach edged closer, smelling opportunity. Not committing. Skardi's kind of patience, let giants tenderize a coast, then arrive as false rescue or clean scavenger. If Pale close to bowshot, deny them a clean story, I told Kel. Horn, smoke, no parley. Kel nodded, eyes on 2 wars at once. The Jotun raised the crook high. Frost, true frost, white and screaming, gathered at the kelp bone tip though the season should not have allowed it. Not winter's honest cold. Stolen chain cold. Skardi's world leaking into a giant's tool, or giant craft that had taught mortal seers bad ideas. I did not need rune sight to fear it. I needed a place to put it. The saga, quiet since the lost harbor, flickered at the edge of breath as Thor's attention and my stance aligned on protection rather than pretty offense. Compatible need detected, household shore, grounded defense, incoming froststorm effect. Thor refinement available, Hearth ward. Cost to unlock, 2 Thor favor. Effect, ground 1 incoming frost or storm effect through shield, earth, or ship. The grounding object takes the damage. Timing and contact are mortal. Does not stop a second effect. Does not heal. Does not aim itself. Physical cost, violent cold burn through arms and chest, brief lock of breath, possible crack in the grounding object severe enough to betray later footing. Equipped gifts remain storm strength and oath edge. Hearth ward would be a refinement of Thor's occupied channel, not a third slot. Rune sight stayed rested. No swap available in active threat anyway. Thor favor 3. Spend 2, leave 1. I did not monologue to the lane. I put my hand on the abandoned key's central stone, old mooring rock, half-sunk iron ring, generations of shore work worn into its face, and I paid. Thor favor fell from 3 to 1. Hearth ward unlocked under storm strength like a second sinew. On me. I shouted. Shield's edge to stone. Do not stand soft. The crook came down. Frost tore free as a white scythe aimed to glaze the key and everyone on it into brittle statues the beasts could crack at leisure. I met it through the stone. Hearth ward took the frost the way a good chimney takes smoke, down, through, into mass that could suffer without dying in the first breath. The white scythe hit the central mooring stone and poured into it. Iron ring screamed. Stone cracked along an old seam and held. Cold ripped up my arms and locked my chest mid-inhale. For a hideous second I was a statue of a man pretending to breathe. Toughness hammered the lock from inside. Breath tore free with a sound I was not proud of. My fingers stuck to stone and tore skin coming off. The key surface glazed in a thin bitter film that stopped short of the shield fence because the stone had eaten the strike's heart. The grounding object paid. A jagged split now ran from ring to key edge. Footing would lie there later. Later was a privilege the frost had tried to erase. Up. Astrid snarled. While its crook is empty. The Jotun stared at the cracked stone as if a sheepdog had bitten the drover's wrist. Surprise is a hole in any large thing. We threw people into the hole. Stenka and Ingel went low at the nearest ankle tendon behind a curtain of gaffs. Bjarni drove like he was hooking a whale that owed him money. Ingrid's fence pushed beasts left into Solvig's remaining snares. I took a short storm strength burst into the axe and cut at the crook hand, not to sever a wrist thick as a bollard in one blow, but to ruin grip. Lightning did not paint me pretty. Force traveled bone to blade to kelp bone staff. The crook jerked. A salt beast climbing the Jotun's leg for advantage shrieked as the staff but crushed it by accident. The giant roared and the roar was worse than the frost, pure physical hate shoving air. Oath Edge kept my recovery step honest when the cracked stone tried to turn my ankle into a story. Practiced footing. Sworn defense. No prophecy. I slid, caught, cut again. Harva, my father, boat hook shining with pitch and brine, should not have been on the key. He was anyway. Tendon, he yelled, and put the hook where Injal's spear had opened a seam. He pulled like hauling a net full of stones. Something in the Jotun's ankle gave with a wet cable sound. The giant staggered toward the deeper pocket Leaf had deliberately left open, away from the notch. Not into the ship. Leaf screamed from water, voice cracking 16 ways. Into the hole. They shouted, and kicked free the wedge she had set. A key block shifted under the giant's sliding weight. Not enough to fell a cliff. Enough to make a wounded ankle betray its owner. The Jotun dropped to one knee in the shallows. Water exploded outward. 2 grey spears vanished and came up coughing. Stenka went under and came up with his fork still in hand and a bloody grin that made him look related to me in the worst way. I ran the split stone, planted, and put everything I had left of the first short surge into a cut at the crook midshaft. Hammercast flashed as temptation, throw, thunder, beautiful line, and I refused it because the lane behind me still had a civilian skiff casting off and Thor does not distinguish. Close work. Ugly work. The crook cracked. Kelp bindings snapped. Bone core splintered. The directed tide staggered, suddenly unemployed. Salt beasts hesitated mid-lunge, hunger still present, pattern gone. Some turned on each other. Some fled for outer water. Some kept coming because hunger does not require a shepherd to be lethal. We killed the ones that kept coming. No speeches. Hooks, spears, axe, fork, adze, oars from the nearest skiff. So Hild's not dragged a wounded beast off a fallen runner and stamped until motion stopped. Not glory. Necessary hate. The Jotun tried to rise on the ruined ankle and failed. It swung the broken crook as a club. I shoved Ingrid left, the club smashed stone where her head had been and widened the hearth ward crack into a true hazard. Astrid from the cart hurled her spear left-handed with a cry that ripped her bandage pink again. The spear took the Jotun in the meat under the collarbone, not a kill, a lesson. Colin screamed at her. She screamed back and demanded another spear. I used the last honest strength in my legs, no surge, just level 4 body and fisherman hate, and climbed the half-kneeling giant's belt rope of woven wreck nets. Close enough to smell its mouth, old whales and copper. Close enough to drive the axe into the already opened collarbone wound and lean with full weight. Now. Bjarni howled. Lines hardened, shore hooks, ship-thrown grapnels. Leaf allowed for one violent moment, Stenka's fork buried as an anchor. The Jotun toppled sideways into the pocket shallows with a crash that threw water over Stormbreaker's rail and soaked the Nidhogg prow like a baptism no priest would claim. It thrashed. It died hard. Large things do. We did not stand in the thrash zone and recite names. We held lines until thrash became twitch and twitch became the particular stillness that is not sleep. A final salt beast, confused and furious, bolted up the lane toward the seed hollow. Runa, who should have been only tallies, dumped a cauldron of pitch-soaked net over it and Harva put the boat hook through. Parents. Not spectators. Silence landed in pieces. Then the saga opened like a clean wound. Worthy hostile force defeated through direct participation, shared command, grounded defense, and personal risk, tide-herding Jotun and driven salt beast front. Renown gained, 20. Before the fight, Renown had stood at 0 of 20 toward Saga level 5. Renown now, 20 of 20. Saga level 5 reached. Thor favor gained, 2 for protecting ordinary households and grounding Stormcraft through shore stone rather than spending lives as fuel. Thor favor rose from 1 after Hearth ward purchase to 3. Odin favor remained 1. Tyr favor remained 1. No Odin spend. No Tyr spend. Choose one measure, might, speed, toughness. I hung on a rail bolt and laughed once, cracked and grateful and half sick. Speed, I said. Not because toughness had failed, toughness had kept breath inside Frostlock. Not because might was useless, might had helped the axe bite. Because the key had taught me that giants and tides punished the slow decision and the stuck foot. Because boats and children and cracked stone all demanded arrival now, not impressive standing later. Speed it is. Gradual adaptation, foot placement, turn of hip, recovery after slip, the small quickness between intention and motion. It will not close wounds, replace blood, mend the torn skin on your fingers, erase tremor, refill sleep, or carry crates for you. It does not make the cracked key safe. Renown resets to 0 toward a later threshold. I said the full state while Old Finn and the Salt Widow marked testimony and Sigrid wrote numbers because she refused to let gods be the only clerks on her shore. Saga level 5. Measures in order, toughness, speed, might, toughness, speed. Renown 0 toward the next. Thor favor 3. Odin favor 1. Tyr favor 1. Equipped, storm strength and oath edge. Refinements, narrow focus and raven mark on the rested Odin gift, hammercast and hearth ward on Thor. Hearth ward used once through the mooring stone. Storm strength used in short bursts. No rune sight. No swap. No third slot. Astrid, grey-faced, managed a breathy insult. Your posture is still an insult, but faster. Good, I said. Then my knees tried to resign and Speed's first subtle gift was only that I caught myself before my face introduced itself to cracked stone. We did not hold a feast on the corpse. We held a count. Bera and Runa walked the stacks with Un and Sigrid, what survived on ship, what sat under Torp in the sheep hollow, what burned in denial, what the beasts ruined, what still lay in Harek's sightline like bait for soft chains. People first, always. Names from the Salt Widow's page against doors from Sigrid's bark. 2 missing who were found alive under a toppled rack, coughing pitch. 1 split harbor runner dead with a crushed chest, name said twice into the wind, body covered, no renown, no speech that turned him into fuel for my legend. Ally dead are debts, not currency. Colin restitched Astrid with hands that shook only after the knot was tied. If you throw another spear before this sets, I will resign and become a farmer in a country without coasts, he told her. You would last a day, Astrid said. You hate turnips. I hate your hobbies more, he said, and made her drink water anyway. Harva sat on the quay edge with his boots dangling above red-black shallows and looked older than the giant for a moment. I sat beside him without asking if fathers wanted company. You came back strange, he said. I left strange, I said. The road only made it official. He nodded at the cracked mooring stone. Your mother will hate that crack. She used to lean nets there. The stone saved the net's owners, I said. She can hate it and still dry nets on the half that holds. Harva's mouth twitched. You sound like her when you pretend you're only practical. Runa heard that as she passed with a slate and did not deny it. She set a piece of flatbread in my hand hard enough to make it an order. Eat. Speed won't chew for you. And when you can stand without painting the world white, we talk about who commands what on this shore while your pale friends watch from the reach. Pale Sail had not fled when the Jotun fell. It had only paused, as if recalculating whether a coast with a dead giant was easier or harder to buy. I ate. The bread tasted of ash and home. Both flavors true. Sigrid planted herself in front of me with charcoal behind both ears now. Face check, she said, and pointed at her own nose, brow, mouth. Say what you see so I know the update is sticking. Left brow scar, I said. Charcoal on the right cheekbone you haven't noticed. Mouth thin on the left when you concentrate. Lip bite left of center when you run. Impatience identical to mother's and somehow worse. Acceptable, she said. You still look like you lost a fight with a freezing door. Don't die after winning. It's rude to the tally. She left before I could turn gratitude into something that slowed her work. I walked the hollow stacks, the notch, the shipfire skiff, and the field path far enough to see Harek's barns. Door-by-door choosers who had gone up during the fight came down with Un's mark still on their tallies and anger still on their tongues. The steward had tried again at the height of the frost strike to trade entry for season oaths. Un had stood in the door and named it. 2 of Harek's spearmen had started to push. Kel and a grey spear arriving late had made the push unattractive. No blood. Barely. The almost blood mattered. It meant Harek still preferred ledger teeth to open war while witnesses stood numerous unarmed. Old Finn set his boundary staff on a flat rock above the lane, not Split Harbor's Law Rock, not Gullhaven's, but living stone with neighbors around it, and looked at me. You asked for a living rock to hear things, he said. This is not a release of your Skadi war command. That unfinished edge still holds until the Pale are driven or a proper harbor court says otherwise. This is narrower, temporary base by consent for the coalition and the shore households. Say it plain. I stood on tired speed-learning legs and spoke plain. We do not seize this shore, I said. We do not invent my father's rent into my kingdom. Stormbreaker's shares stay written. Astrid's company stays contracted, not owned. Shore households keep their doors and tallies. Winter stacks under 3 key watch remain 3 key, Runa for shore mothers, Bearer for ship stores, unneutral. Harrek's barns remain Harrek's, entry stays door by door without lifetime claim on me and without forced season oaths during flight. This lane, notch, hollow, and key become a temporary war base by consent of the people standing here, to shelter living decks, repair what we can, and face pale sails and whatever chainwork sent frost through a giant's crook. If I turn consent into ownership, name me oath broken on this rock and any other that will listen. Oath edge warmed, not a new binding of seat theft law, already sworn, but recognition that war command's living decks now included a consented ground. TYR favor stayed one. No cheap rise for speeches. Harver spoke without being asked, which was the point of consent. I am sure, not crew, he said. I agree to the temporary base. I do not agree to give Harrek a victory feast if we live. Runa, I agree. Stacks and children first. Heroes clean their own blood off the stones. I agree, and I will break a steward's stick again if needed. So Hild for the freed, we agree if we are hands, not bargained furniture. Leaf, ashore again with freeboard finally honest, Stormbreaker agrees to anchor under the written shares. My will. My oar. Temporary base is not my father's seat wearing new wool. Astrid, from the cart brought up to the rock's edge, Grey Company agrees. Contract holds. Door counts before pretty rocks next time too. Her eyes found mine. Incomplete still, less stupid. Partnership. Kel, Ingrid, Jarni, the Salt Widow, even Stenker with his fork, spoke yes in their own ugly dialects of survival. A few households abstained and were marked free to take the high path inland without penalty. Abstention without punishment is how consent stays clean. Harrek arrived late with clean hands and a face like curdled beeswax. You hold court on my domain, he said. We hold consent on living stone, old Finn said. Your domain claims can be shouted at a fuller court when pale sails are not counting our breaths. Unless you prefer to declare yourself for the fungus hull on the reach. Harrek's eyes flicked seaward despite himself. Pale sail had crept another finger closer during our words. I declare myself for Rent's surviving winter, Harrek said. Temporary base if stacks tallied and my barn's grain not stolen. I do not grant you lordship. I did not ask for lordship, I said. I refused your lifetime collar. We can dislike each other and still not feed the giant's cousins. A thin agreement, sour and useful. Finn marked it. Sigrid copied. Bera chalked. The shore that had owned our catch became, for a measured time, a place that owned our mutual survival without owning our necks. I stepped off the rock and the cracked key caught my eye again. Hearth Ward's price sat there in stone. Gifts that damage the ground you stand on are honest that way. They remind you protection is not free and not gentle. Pale pressure is a different animal from a giant's crook. Skadi did not need to land to hurt us. He needed us to flinch wrong, chase his watching hull into deep water and leave the notch naked, beg Harrek for locked barns on worse terms, fracture consent with panic, spend the last strength of a level 5 body on a skirmish that bought only pride. The bruise-colored sail stood off beyond the black teeth of reef with a patience that made my teeth itch. Orm watched until his eyes watered. Leaf rotated lookouts. Twice the pale hull slid closer on a breath of wind that did not touch our drying racks. Twice it fell back when Stormbreaker showed oars and the key showed hooks. They want the giant's corpse, they said quietly, speaking without being asked for the first time in an hour. Or the crook bone. Or the names of who killed it. Buyers pay for proof that coasts can die. They don't get the crook, I said. Burn the bindings. Sink the bone in the deep pocket where Toby says the current chews. Corpse we cut for nothing useful and burn what attracts beasts. We did that work in the afternoon under a sky the color of old iron. Stenker hated burning a fallen enemy large enough to have been a land feature. Jarni hated leaving fat in water for new hungers. Both hated Skadi more. Pitch and flame took what they could. What sank, sank. What stank, we endured. Speed's gradual gift showed itself in small ways while I worked, a quicker recovery when a beam rolled, a cleaner step around the hearth ward crack, the ability to turn from key to ramp shout without the old lag that invites accidents. Not a blur. Not a God's joke. Just a body learning to arrive at the next necessary place with less argument. The favor 3 sat steady. The God was not satisfied, God's like 4 are weather, and weather is never finished, but the immediate demand to put eyes and force on the margin walker had been answered with a corpse and a cracked stone. That was installment, not absolution. Odin favor 1 stayed a quiet coin I would not spend on curiosity while memory still owed my sister's face attention instead of more thefts. T-wire favor 1 held the unfinished war command and the consent frame without confusion. Seek not seized. Son not stolen. Ship shares not rewritten. Living decks defended. Temporary base not turned into stolen earldom. Astrid slept a true sleep in the cart under hollow tarps, finally, while Ingrid ran grey watches. I sat near enough to hear her breathe and far enough not to hover into her temper. When she woke at dusk she demanded the pale count, the stack count, the dead name, and Heirek's last words. I gave them. She gave me a look that said incomplete plans can still be less stupid if door counts stay ahead of speeches. You grounded frost through stone, she said. That was correct. You climbed a giant's belt like a boy showing off for a shore. The belt climb ended it, I said. The lines ended it, she said. You were 1 knot in the net. Remember that when Thor tries to make you a solitary hammer again. I nodded. Pride wanted to argue. Pride had also nearly put me alone on banks with Stenker's hay fork philosophy. I let the nod stand. Hava and Runa fed people from 3 key stacks with a meanness that was love, full for wounded and small, 3/4 able, officers matching cut, no homecoming feast. I took 3/4 and the look my mother gave me when I tried to refuse the full water cup after frost lock. Leaders who faint make ugly law. Bera had said it on the cart road. Runa enforced it with a mother's jurisdiction older than Tyr. Sigrid updated my face memory lesson with a lamp for evening edges. God's take, she said. We rewrite. If you equip that thing again around me, I will break your nose so the new memory has a reason to be ugly. Fair, I said. Everything is fair with you now, she said. Make something unfair happen to that pale sail instead. I walked the waterline with old Finn and Leaf after full dark. Phosphorescence clung wrong around the place the Jotun had died, a cold glitter that was not honest summer glow. Orm flinched hard when he stepped through a patch. His hand went to his burned scalp. His eyes unfocused toward something I could not see because rune sight was unequipped and Freyja's paths were not in my slots. What? I asked. Listening, Orm whispered. Not the giant. After. Like a road under the water where things that should be buried are being walked. Finn's staff tapped stone. Say that again without dream fog. Orm swallowed. Since the barrow. Since the hanging dead ship. Sometimes I hear, not words. Traffic. Tonight it's closer. As if killing the herder opened a gate the herder had been using as fence. Leaf stared seaward. Skadi moves corpse crews on roads. We closed nothing of his by killing a giant. We may have kicked a signpost. Oathedge gave no answer. Tyr is not a prophet. Storm's strength only ached. Speed made me want to pace. I stood still instead and listened with ordinary ears. Far out, under the pale sails watching dark, something faint moved like a second horizon of pale knot sails, more suggestion than fleet, more wrongness than weather. A sound came with it too soft for horns, a dragging, as of many feet on a road that should not be able to hold feet. Not tonight's fight, I said, and hated the sentence. Tonight we hold consent base, water, watches. Tomorrow we find whether Orm's road is real enough to close. If we chase ghosts on no sleep, Skadi gets the shore for free. Orm nodded, unconvinced, brave anyway. I'll watch. If it gets louder, I say so. You say so, I said. You do not walk to meet it alone. He almost smiled. You sound like Astrid. Good, I said. Behind us, the rent coast settled into exhausted half-sleep, dogs on empty yards, infants on Stormbreaker, tallies under 3 keys, cracked stone cooling, giant stink fading under pitch. Ahead and under, something unburied had begun to notice we were still alive. Night on a consented base is not peace. It is organized refusal to die stupidly before morning. I set watches in 3s because 2s fall asleep in pairs and 1s invent courage. Key. Notch. Hollow stacks. Field path toward Harek's barns. Ship deck under leaf. Inland gorse track where the Linter woman had pointed tax-dodging truth. Elder ran messages until her feet bled. I rotated her off and put a freed youth under Sohild's eye on the same route. Runners are spines. Spines need skin left on them. Speed made the night oddly survivable. I could walk the circuit faster without sounding like a man fleeing his own thoughts. The gradual gift settled into calves and hips as promised, no closed wounds, no erased tremor in the frost-torn fingers, no full belly from willpower. When I stumbled near the hearth ward crack, the new quickness turned a fall into a kneel. Stenker, on key watch with his fork, pretended not to see. I let him pretend. Men who almost died together should be allowed small dignities. Food math at the mid-watch was uglier than the people math and better than Split Harbour's road. Bearer showed me the plank by lamp, 3 key stacks would hold the joined mouths, shore households present, coalition column, ship pocket, at 3/4 able and full wounded and small for a stretch measured in careful days, not generous ones. Fish denied to beasts and oil burned for curtains had bought life and spent calories. Seed mostly saved. Nails aboard. Beer still mostly for cleaning, Harver swore, while 2 grey spears stared at the casks like lonely theologians. If Pale land, we can feed a fight for a short ugly time, Bearer said. If Pale besiege, we fish and we cut able rations again before we cut children. If Eirik locks barns and smiles, I will personally season his beeswax with seawater. I'll hold your cloak, unsaid from the dark, not joking. I checked Astrid's bandage with Colin supervising like a jealous hawk. The high chest wound remained an argument against deep breaths and thrown spears. It was clean enough. Fever lower. She woke under my fingers and said, if that's romance, it's badly timed. It's inventory, I said. Acceptable, she murmured, echoing Sigrid, and slept again. Romance, if it lived anywhere, lived in the fact that she trusted me to count her pulse without turning it into ownership. That was enough for a night with giant stink still on the tide. Orm's listening came and went. Between watches he sat near the prow scarf with his palm on wood and his eyes half shut. When I asked what he heard, he said, feet. Not on our stones. On something that thinks it is a road. Sometimes a bell that isn't metal. Sometimes my name in a mouth that isn't trying to be kind. Fraser's kind of traffic, Dalla said softly, surprising me at his other shoulder. Not all of it hostile. All of it costly if you answer wrong. I'm not answering, Orm said. I'm refusing to be surprised. I almost equipped nothing and promised him spirit sense later. Almost is how men get killed mid-swap. There was no lawful rest clean of threat with pale sail watching and unburied traffic whispering. Storm strength and oath edge stayed. 2 slots. No third. Fraser could wait for a true rest and a true choice. Harrick's night manners arrived as a bottle of something expensive carried by the steward under a trucish cloth that was not grey and not holy. A gift, the steward said. To the temporary base. Set it on the stone, old Finn said. Unopened. If it is kindness, it can wait for daylight witnesses. If it is something else, daylight will make the something else shy. The steward left the bottle. Finn did not drink. Bearer sniffed and said it smelled like debt. Sigrid labelled it do not with charcoal and a skull face that was not artistic and was very clear. Near the second watch, a salt beast remnant, wounded, undriven, stupid with pain, crawled into the hollow. The hollow watch killed it without waking infants. Good watches are boring when they work. Near the third, pale sail showed a lamp briefly, as if signalling someone inland. Kel and Ingrid swept the field path and found no answering lamp and one of Harrick's spearmen pretending to piss near our tally post. They walked him home without blood and with a promise that next time gravity would be less friendly. Harrick would hear. Good. Manners should have consequences. I sat with Runa in a scrap of quiet while she mended a net by touch more than sight. I could not remember her mending song. The absence was a hole with clean edges now, not a fresh cut. She hummed nothing. She worked. You keep looking at Sigrid like she might vanish, Runa said. I'm rewriting a page the gods tore, I said. It takes staring. Stare less like a ghost and more like a brother who will still be here to carry seed tomorrow, she said. Presence is the update that matters. I took her hand. Neck calluses. Strength. No system line explained it. I did not need one. Thor's distant attention faded to a low weather ache. The installment had been paid in giant blood and cracked stone. Scardy's fungus sail remained. Orm's road remained. Sleep remained a rationed substance. I took 1 hour with my back to the hollow top pole and my axe under my palm and speed twitching in dreams as footwork against waves that had teeth. Dawn made the consented base look smaller and more real. Stormbreaker held her offing on a short leash of oars and judgment. The cracked key showed its hearth ward wound without shame. Pitch-black scars marked where denial fires had eaten oil and fish to keep beasts from turning our winter into their joy. In the sheep hollow, tarps beaded with night moisture over seed and rescued barrels. People moved stiff, alive, irritable, the holy trinity of survival mornings. I restated the ledger aloud for anyone whose sleep had rewritten fear into rumor. Level 5. Toughness, Speed, Might, Toughness, Speed. Thor Favor 3. Odin 1. Tyr 1. Storm Strength and Oath Edge equipped. Hearth Ward and Hammer Cast known on Thor. Narrow Focus and Raven Mark known on Rested Rune Sight. No swap last night. Giant dead. Stacks mostly held. Temporary base by consent. Eirik not our lord. Pale sail still watching. No one runs inland alone. 3 key tallies before any barn smile. Sigrid sniffed. You forgot 3/4 able. 3/4 able, I added. Full wounded and small. Officers match able. No private pots. No do not bottles opened. Better, she said. Harva put me on net repair for a stretch because fathers believe useful boredom keeps returned sons from looking for new giants before breakfast. My fingers, skin torn from stone, hurt in honest ways. Speed did not so for me. I sewed anyway. The mesh became a meditation that was not Odin's kind, no memory price, only time. Astrid insisted on standing. Colin insisted she sit. They compromised on a prop kneel that let her see the notch while not ripping the chest cloth. She set door counts for the morning move of 1 more hollow load onto ship, which households wanted off-coast passage to kin inland by water, which would stay under consent base, which would test Eirik's barns with unpresent. Ally command. I did not override it. Split Harbor had taught me what happens when pretty rocks outrun door counts. Leaf came ashore with a face like bad weather. Pale Hull launched a skiff at first light, he said. 3 rowers. No parley flag. They took water samples where the giant sank and scraped stoneweed into jars. Then they went back. Not traders. Chain work appetite, Dalla said. Proof and residue. Next time they launch, we take the skiff if it crosses the outer teeth, I said. Not before. We don't donate ourselves to deep water for jars. Leaf's eyes said he wanted the fight earlier. His hands said he would steer the line I named. 16 and aging in public. Eirik himself came at mid-morning without spearmen, which was either trust or theatre. Your temporary base is inconvenient, he said. It gathers mouths that look at my barns as if barns were crimes. Barns aren't crimes, I said. Collars worn as kindness are. Keep selling storage door by door. Stop selling panic. He looked at the cracked stone, the pitch scars, the ship, the girl with charcoal commanding seed. Something like reluctant revision passed through his face and did not become apology. There are rumors of Sten on pale decks, Eirik said. If he comes claiming old voyage rights over this domain's catch, then we treat claims as cloth and people as people, I said. If he opens doors for corpse rowers, he is Poston-shaped again. If he only shouts, we shout at rocks. I still do not seize his seat. I still do not give him mine that doesn't exist. Eirik almost smiled without beeswax. You are a terrible tenant and a useful reef. Do not make me regret the temporary sour agreement. Regret freely, Runa said from behind a tally. Just don't invent seizures while regretting. He left. The air improved. We buried the crushed Split Harbor runner above the weed line with stones that were interesting enough to find again and plain enough not to invite trophy hunters. Old Finn spoke little. I said the name twice. Orm flinched mid-right, head turning seaward hard. Louder, he whispered. I followed his gaze. The pale sail had company now, not a full corpse fleet, not yet, but a second bruise-colored shape farther out, and between them a line of disturbance in the water like a submerged causeway breathing. The road, Orm said. Not metaphor. Astrid's voice, thin, then the work we came for is held, people moved, stacks kept, giant down, base consented, and the next ugly thing has the manners to show its spine before we pretend we're done. She was right. The immediate work of the shore that owned us had been completed in sweat and cracked stone. What came next would not be solved by Hearth Ward alone, or by speed, or by my father's boat hook. It would require listening I had not yet equipped and rights for dead that Skadi wanted to hire without pay. Orm tried to explain the listening without sounding mad, which is harder than fighting salt beasts. We sat on the notched stones, Orm, me, Astrid propped, Dalla, Old Finn, Leaf, Ingrid as muscle against interruptions, while the base worked around us because work does not pause for theology. It started as dreams on Stormbreaker, Orm said. Prow eyes. Then as pressure when we passed places where many had died badly. Split Harbor made it worse. The giant's death made it open. Imagine a cart road under waves, but the carts are dead men walking because someone wrote their names wrong on purpose. I don't see the full road. I hear traffic. When I pushed attention at it this morning, something on it turned its head at me. Dalla translated the feeling into older words without claiming priesthood. Spirit traffic. Predators follow attention the way sharks follow blood. If he is marked, the mark may smear onto decks he loves. Fraser, I said. Not a prayer. A diagnosis. Astrid's eyes narrowed. Which means at true rest you may swap Thor for her and walk deaf into a choir, or keep Thor and stay half blind to what's hunting Orm. Either way the pale sail loves our hesitation. I won't swap on a whim mid-watch, I said. Lawful rest only. Both feet. Breathing controlled. No active pursuit in the immediate area. The pale are watching, not boarding. The road is pressure, not yet a boarding pike. Tonight, if the base holds quiet, we consider rest and a swap with witnesses. Not now, while jars and skiffs still test us. Finn nodded. Good. Gods are not emergency doors. Orm swallowed. I don't want to be the hole they come through. You won't be alone on the wall, Ingrid said. Practical. Final. I put a hand on Orm's shoulder. You warn. You don't bait. If anything asks you to walk out on water because it knows your name, you tell me and you hold a rope. Famous last steps are banned. He breathed out shaking and then steadier. Banned, he agreed. Sigrid arrived without invitation because clerks go where secrets make bad numbers. Is this going to cost more faces? She asked me. Not if I can help it, I said. That is not a no, she said. It's the only honest answer I have, I said. I already can't hold your old face sharp. I won't spend more of you for a cleaner map of dead men's feet if living maps will do. She studied me, updating her own ledger of whether brothers are safe investments. Fine. Then I will copy Orm's warning into the tallies so no one calls him mad later when the road becomes obvious to late heroes. She wrote. Witnesses watched her write. That mattered more than comfort. On the water, the disturbance line pulsed. Once, a pale shape that might have been a man and might have been a seal skeleton in clothes broke surface, looked at our notch with empty patience, and sank without splash. Renown did not flicker. Looking is not victory. Horror is not currency. Jani spat. I hate roads that don't stay on land. Keep freeboard honest, I told him. If traffic becomes hands on rail, your calls run the deck. Astrid's fence runs the stones. I will not be everywhere even with speed. Especially with speed, Astrid said. Fast fools reach bad ideas sooner. I accepted the hit. She was keeping me alive with edges. Harva and Runa joined late, hearing enough. My father's jaw set. We just got you back, he said. I'm still back, I said. Back doesn't mean finished. Runa's hand found my neck again, inventory of vertebrae. Then finish each day without selling the next day's eyes. Eat. Sleep when the rock allows. Let the girl update your sight the ordinary way. Sigrid, without looking up from her letters, said, I charge fees now. Put it on my tally, I said. The meeting broke into tasks. That was the healthiest end such talks can have. Orm went to prow watch with a rope literally knotted to a ring and they assigned as his living shadow, paid guide becoming paid against solitude. Dalla taught two shore teens a simple call pattern if Orm's face went empty. Colin prepared vinegar cloths and calm words for panic that might look like spirit sickness and might be ordinary terror. Bera locked the do not bottle in a crate under 3-key nonsense just to make a point about untested gifts. I walked to the cracked mooring stone and set my palm on it. Cold memory of Frostlock shivered up the arm. Hearth ward remained available as known refinement, not endlessly reusable without cost. The stone would fail a second grounding of equal hate. Protection spends the ground. I needed to remember that when Thor next suggested I make every shore a shield. Installment paid, I told the weatherache. Collection on other debts comes due. Wait your turn. Thunder far out growled without striking. Agreement or warning. With Thor the difference is academic. By the second dusk on home stones, the shore that had owned us had become something we jointly borrowed for war. Households fed from 3 key stacks. Stormbreaker rode as floating hall and nursery. Grey spears and shore hooks shared watches without pretending to be one clan. Eirik sulked uphill usefully dry. The giant was pitch and bone and memory. Speed lived in my feet as a quiet promise. Hearth lived in a crack I stepped around with respect. We had done what the landing demanded. People off the low ground. Winter stores saved enough to mean spring. Jotun tied header broken. Base held by consent, not seizure. Landlord's lifetime collar refused. My sister's face under rewrite by lamp and work. Parents as agents, not hostages waiting for a sun-shaped key. That was the coin's finished face. The other face turned up under the waterline. Orm's rope went taut at last light hard enough to ring the bolt. I ran, speed making the run cleaner than pride would have, and found him on his knees at the prow scarf, eyes wide, mouth open on a soundless warning. They held his shoulders. Out beyond the teeth, the submerged causeway had risen from suggestion to structure, a pale ribbon of compacted dead and frost silt and chained weed, wide enough for 3 carts, running from the deep toward a point down coast where fog stood like a door. Figures moved on it. Not living crews. Not honest drowned floating. Walking. Some still wore voyage colors I did not want to recognize. Some wore nothing but binding wire and appetite. Above that road, Skadi's pale sails, 2 now, maybe a third ghosting, kept their polite distance as if they were merchants waiting for a ferry they already owned. Astrid, cart hauled to the notch by cursed orderlies, took one look and went colder than fever. They'll conscript anything we leave unburied and anything we bury wrong, she said. Including our runner under stones if the road finds him. Including Orm if he keeps hearing alone. We hold here tonight, I said. No night march onto that. Torches on our dead. Salt. Names. Watches doubled. At first lawful rest window I decide the Fraser swap with witnesses, or I refuse it and we find mortal rights enough. Either choice costs. Old Finn set his staff against the notched stone. The sure work we came to do is held, he said, plain for frightened ears. Next work has a name whether we like it or not. Sigrid wrote without being told, rode under water. Pale above. Or marked. Do not walk alone. Runa stood with a pitch torch already lit, face set toward the downcoast fog door. Harva had the boat hook and no hayfork illusions left. Leif's hands whitened on a rail he had made his own by will and work. Stenka whispered a curse that included gods by category and landlords by name. I felt oath edge, unfinished war command still closed, living decks expanded, Skadi not driven, no harbor rock of full court having released me. Storm strength tired and ready. Thor favor 3. Odin 1. Tyr 1. Level 5 under new speed. Room sight rested, memory prices already paid in song and hands and the edges of a sister's face. Hearth cracked into local stone. Hammer cast unused today. No third slot. Behind my ribs, something that was not the system and not a god said the simple truth, home had not been a rest. Home had been a test of whether I could save a shore without owning it, and I had passed far enough to see the next failure waiting if we slept proud. The Road of the Unburied breathed cold up the black water. A figure on it lifted an arm as if hailing Orm by shared wound. Orm made a broken noise and bit it down. I won't answer, he said. I won't. You won't, I said. We bind you with rope and friends and work. If the road wants a conversation, it can have one with all of us awake and ugly. Pale sails trimmed as if laughing without mouths. I put my hand on Stormbreaker's rail, then on the cracked keystone, then, briefly, on Sigrid's shoulder as she passed with her tally board like a weapon. Hold the base, I told the living. Count the living twice. Torch the wrong dark. No one walks the ribbon. Dawn makes plans. Night makes only holds. The shore that owned us answered with the sounds of people obeying a plan they had helped build. Buckets, torches, spears, a child's complaint muffled by a grandmother's hand, Bearer's chalk, Finn's staff, Astrid's dry order to reset the cart wall facing down coast, Leif's horn code for if the road sprouted boats. I did not call the giant's death a final victory. I called the living still breathing a completed duty. And I watched the unburied road gather its feet under Skadi's patient sails, knowing the next true thing would ask for ears I had not yet dared equip and for dead I refused to let become anyone's cheap fleet. Between the cracked stone and the pale ribbon, speed twitched in my calves like a readiness that would not be enough alone. Good. Alone had never been the point. I raised my face to the home wind, let it scrape pitch smoke and giant stink off my teeth, and kept my hand on the rail until the first night torch line burned continuous from notch to hollow, a human chain against a road that should not have existed. The 3 rock and shell marks sat behind us in the dark, boyhood signal still true, come by water. We had come. We had stayed without kneeling. The waterbowl print on the shingle lay empty now, owner dead. The hammer scratch remained, Thor's unpaid larger bill. Far down the unburied road, something answered Orm's refused hail with a patience worse than hunger. Dawn, I said again, to him, to me, to any god taking notes. We hold until dawn. And this rented coast, temporary base, consented, armed, afraid, alive, held with us while the drowned north showed the spine of its next war.